Okay, we are live now. Let me send the link to the group while we wait for okay, we are waiting for others to join the live. Okay, so while we wait for others to join, so we're going to be talking about the course psychology while we wait for others to join. The concept of psychology is what we are treating, and what is the concept of psychology? No, we are going to be talking about the descriptions. We're going to be talking about psychology more than just common sense. A lot of persons refer to psychology as just common sense. We're going to find out more about that tonight. We're going to be talking about different definitions of psychology and the likes. We're just going to be treating Unit 1 of Module 1 today. And in less than few minutes, we'll be done. Less than 30 minutes should be done. So, what is the introduction? I mean, we're talking about now the introduction of psychology. We have by now, you should have read through the course guide. Okay, which was sent. Okay, that's introduction. Okay, we're going to be talking about the course guide actually, which speaks more about what psychology is all about in a nutshell. So it said if you have not read, please ensure. Okay, that's a course guide. So we have in this unit, we'll learn the definition of psychology across all ages. Psychology has been defined over time across different scholars and different persons, and according to their own perspectives and the likes. So we have the description. There are various reasons for popular misconception. There are various reasons for popular misconception, meaning that psychology has been, there has been a lot of misconception about psychology that has been misunderstood, that has been taken out of context. So, frequent appearances in the mass media of statements about what psychology tells us, there are often one-sided views, exaggerating some opinions held by only a few psychologists, or even by some who are not properly qualified psychologists. Just like we said earlier, there's a misconception about what psychology is, and then this misconception is actually as a result of one-sided story by someone. Yeah, it's a one-sided story by the person who is defining psychology, or probably it's as a result of the person who is defining psychology is not well qualified. Now, this is because human behavior can be observed by all sundry who attempt to explain occurrences from their own intuition. Okay, we have two persons on live with us now. You're welcome. You came a bit late, actually, but I haven't gone too far. I can actually still go back a bit and cover previous ground. Please, in the comments, you can always use the comment to ask your questions. So this is how it works. I believe you have your notes, you have your book, you have your Bible already. So as I go through the course, the material, explaining things, please ensure you take notes, ensure you jot down, and if you are by if by any means you don't understand what I'm saying at the point, please do well to signify that you don't understand so I can quickly go through it and go back again. So with this being said, please use the comment section to identify that you are following and everything is going smoothly. If you can hear me clearly, please also tell me you can hear me clearly. So this is the rudiments of psychology, and I'm on I believe you're also with your material. I am on page 2, and I'm taking the description now, the description of psychology. In module unit 1, what we are talking about tonight is the description. We're talking about, we'll get to know if psychology is more than just common sense. We'll find out, and we'll also find out the definition of psychology by different scholars. So with that being said, now about the description of psychology. So now, one thing about psychology is that there has been popular misconceptions about psychology. We are talking about the description of psychology now. There has been popular misconception about it, and this is because of two things. Now, the first thing is either as a result of exaggeration of an opinion held by few psychologists, or probably a psychologist who is not qualified enough. Misconception in the sense that it could actually have been overrated or underrated. What exactly is psychologist? So this misconception has done a lot of harm to psychology. Misconception in the sense that a definition of psychology can be overrated, meaning over exaggerated by a particular opinion of an individual. I hope we get that clearly. Or underrated by a psychologist who is not overly qualified. Now, this is because human behavior can be observed. Let me quickly chip into us. Okay, now you said what module, please? That's module 1. That should be on page. Okay, I'm using the soft copy, but if you can locate 3.1, 3.1. That's where we have the introduction, the main content, which is description. Is psychologist more than just common sense and definition? Are you there? Please let me know if you are there so that I can know we are together. I'm actually waiting for you to know if you are there so we can move together. Mr. Iboru, are you there? Okay, so I will just go ahead and let me assume you are there already. So as I was saying, we are talking about the description of psychology now, and we said psychology there's a misconception about it, and this misconception is as a result of two things: the exaggeration of a personal opinion by a psychologist, or the underrating of psychology by unqualified psychologists. I believe that is cleared, and that has been taken note of. So we then move on by saying psychology, definitely, as we all know, psychology has to do with the studying of human behavior. And this is because human behavior can be observed by all and sundry. You have to be a psychologist before you can observe human behavior, before you can observe the behavior of your friend, behavior of anyone close to you. You don't have to be a psychologist. But one thing is that now, in other branches of science, let's take for example physics and chemistry. Okay, okay, thank you very much. Okay, I can see the message now. It says go on. Thank you. So as I said earlier on, you don't have to be a psychologist before you can observe human behavior. But one thing about physics and chemistry is that in other branches of science, for example, physics and chemistry, common sense or intuition does not help observe to explain why the atomic hydrogen behaves differently from a monatomic one when these are bombarded by nutrients. Now, to explain that, you know, some persons just believe that psychology has to do with just common sense, which is not actually true. Psychology is deeper than that, you know. But a lot of persons believe that when it comes to physics and chemistry, you know, they work with facts. You understand what I'm saying? Just like what we have read just now, you know, they work with basic facts and objectives. You know, you can't just make assumptions without a proven theory, which is also the same thing in psychology. But because of this misconception by people, psychologists is then either exaggerated or underrated. Now, another explanation of such differential judgments, an explanation to such differential judgments now, differential judgment in the sense that psychology is being rated side by side with other science subjects. Now, another explanation of such differential judgments is traceable to the fact that whereas human behavior may be a matter of common observation, scientific facts are only understood after sustained learning. Just like as I said earlier on, you know, scientific facts has to do with objectivity. There has to be a research and there has to be a result before you can conclude at a result. Before you can conclude at a reasonable result, there has to be a fact. It's also the same thing with psychology, but it's quite unfortunate that there's a differential judgment. Now, and this differential judgment can be traced to the fact that whereas human behavior may be a matter of common observation, I, I mean, even the scientific experiment that scientists carry out, there has to be an observation. Anything research is a process of observing it, but it's actually now structured in precepts. Please, if you are understanding what I am saying, please do well to identify that you are following so that I am sure I'm not speaking above your head. So let's take this down. The differential judgment between psychology and other science courses is traceable to the fact that whereas human behavior may be a matter of common observation, scientific facts are only understood after sustainable learning. Scientific facts, please, I will have you jot that down. Scientific facts are only understood after sustainable learning, meaning after research must have been conducted. Human behavior may be a matter of common observation. Common observation in the sense that for you to discover the behavior of a person or an individual, you have to carry out some observation. But it is not in the case of scientific facts. Now, many writers many writers also think that the labels, especially labels of definition and construct in psychology, are derived from daily usage of many common words, while those used in pure science have separate origin and they are restricted use. Now, for example, intelligence is a psychological construct which implies one thing to a psychologist and another to a layman, and a typical word, thermocouple, of pure science means a very special thing to scientists and student of science, but perhaps nothing to a layman. Now, this is what you're going to take down. Now, take this down. Intelligence is a psychological construct, because in your exam you might come across this question and you say dash is a psychological construct. Please, this is how you get your points from your material. You just bring out the phrase and jot it down. Excuse me. Excuse me. So intelligence, please take that down. Intelligence is a psychological construct which implies one thing to a psychologist and another to a layman. Please, if you have taken that down, please let me know so I can move on. Have you taken that down? Or you can just if you might not be able to write it now as I'm explaining, you can just highlight it in your material so you can come back to it and make your note with it. And if you have done that already, please let me know in the comments so I can know you are following along. So I know you are following. Have you done that? Okay, while I wait for you, um just let me just proceed. It's actually an example anyway. So it means that you know psychology and in psychology now, as I said earlier on, a typical word thermocouple of pure science could mean specific thing in science to a scientist and students of science, but perhaps a layman, nothing to a layman. Now, we said, furthermore, we are just trying to draw, we are talking about description. We are trying to draw analysis with psychology and other science courses. Now, furthermore, many people think psychology is the same as psychoanalysis and Freudian or neo-Freudian psychology. Now, we'll discuss this in later units of this course, which psychologists regard as accounting for only minor. Okay, yes, said yes. Okay, thank you very much. I just saw that, so we can thank you very much. I just saw that so that we can move on then. So we have we're actually trying to make a note out of this, so we just have to go on a very moderately fast manner. So we have furthermore, people think, okay, I think we've covered that. Okay, it is also not uncommon to find ignorant individuals who conceptualize psychologists as those who can hypnotize others. Okay, now for a layman, I apologize for the noise in the background. That's the dog. That's my dog in the compound. I think somebody just passed and caught his attention. Please, let's not be distracted with the noise in the background. So also, now speaking of psychology, it is actually uncommon to find ignorant individuals who conceptualize, excuse me please, just give me a moment. So sorry about that. I had to shut the window so that the noise will not disturb us anymore. So as I was saying, here we will look at some of the descriptions. Let's not forget we are still on the description of psychology as against other science courses and the misconception about psychology. Now, here we will look at some of the description of the concept of psychology. You will probably have come across the word psychology before. Definitely, you must have come across the word, and you may have your own idea of what psychology is all about. Unfortunately, there are a number of misconceptions and misunderstanding as to what psychology is exactly. Now, just just take this point out. I'm trying to bring this. I'm bringing this up because coming into the exam is actually crazy. You really don't know where exactly the question is coming from. So points like this, you don't want to joke with them. So just write this phrase out as I read it. Unfortunately, there are number of misconceptions and misunderstanding as to what psychology is exactly. Just keep that somewhere. Now, let's move on. As if you are written that down, please just let me know you are writing that down so I can know you are following. Just use the comment below and let me know if you have done that. As for this reason, we will consider why this is so and then examine some description of the subject area. So we have a self-assessment. Now it says, how would you describe? Okay, you said I should come back again. Okay. Okay, so let me go back a bit. Where exactly do you want me to go back to, Mr. Iroro? Page 2 on the soft copy. Okay, Mr. Abdullah Sela said done. Okay, what page? Is page 2, sir. On the soft copy, I actually don't know, the page might be different on the hard copy, but on the soft copy is page 2. And his main content 3.1 description. We are talking about the description of psychology as that have that affect the misconception and misunderstanding by people. Please, have you figured that out? Mr. Iroro, have you figured that out so we can continue? Okay, while I'm waiting for you to respond, Mr. Iroro, please, if you have figured that out, please let us know so that we can know that we are all on the same page. So, with all what we have said, we have a self-assessment. It says, how would you describe psychology? Make a few brief notes before moving on to the next page. So from what we have said in the previous description, I'll just give a quick one. Now, psychology is a scientific study of human behavior that has attracted over time misconception and misunderstanding by all and sundry. Although in this level you will not be writing, if you are writing your exams, you understand, it's not going to be pen on paper, it's going to be computer based. And believe me, questions like this don't come out. You understand? It doesn't come out because, okay, he said no. Okay, he said no, he has not figured it out yet. Mr. Iroro, if you're using the hard copy, I don't really know what the page number is on the hard copy, but I'm using the soft copy here, and it's actually showing me page 21. Okay, you're on the hard copy. Okay, it's actually the first okay, yes, I get that you're on the hard copy. So it's the first few pages after introduction. Let me just scroll up quickly. So after the introduction, you just scroll down a bit, you will see it. If you're on the hard copy, okay, module 1. Mr. Iroro, can you get it? Module 1, concept of psychology. Is directly, we are taking it from the beginning. We are not jumping anything. We are taking it straight up from the beginning. After your table of contents, then you move down, you flip the pages, then you see module 1. You see module 1, unit 1. So we are under module 1, unit 1. Yes, we are under Module 1, Unit 1. Have you gotten it, sir? So we've skipped the objectives. We are on the description now. Now, under the description now, we are now under self-assessment exercise. Are we together? We are now in the self-assessment exercise after the description of psychology. Please, if you have gotten this, let us know so that we can move together. And not to worry, um, the recorded version of this class will be made available after some hours on the channel. So please, but nevertheless, I still want us to move together. So while we are waiting for you, sir, let me just keep talking about the self-assessment. So the question was, how would you describe psychology? He said, make a brief note before moving on to the next section. So from what we have spoke about what psychology is as against other science courses like chemistry and physics, you understand, and as against how some psychologists, probably who are not qualified enough, has degraded the definition, the term psychology, and some who, because of some personal opinion and belief, has over exaggerated psychology. Now, I would say psychology can be defined as a science course or as a science which study the behavior. Okay, thank you very much for that. He said he has seen it. Thank you very much. So we can move on. Okay, thank you. Okay, he has seen it. So as I was saying earlier on, it's a science that studies human behavior through observation. You can take that down if you want, but believe me, you self-assessment questions are not really going to come out in your exams because it's going to be objective and sub-objective. But it's good for you to have an idea of what it is, and over time, psychology has attracted some exaggeration and some degrading. Because speaking of exaggeration now, every scholars, every psychologist has his or her own personal opinion, and based on that they can exaggerate its definition. And as against the degrading, some psychologists are not qualified, some are less qualified, and their definition definitely is not going to be on point. So with that said, let's move to the next page. So we have now we are still on page 21. On my soft copy here showing 21, and I'm saying now let us go on with description of the concept of psychology. Now, while people have been interested in human behavior for thousands of years, psychology has only become a discipline in its own right in the last 100 years. Now, please, let's take this down. While people have not yet, just listen, while people have been interested in human behavior for thousands of years, now what you're going to take down is, for example, now this question can come out like this: dash years have has people been interested in human behavior? So you know the answer. The answer is then thousands of years. Now, interest in human behavior for thousands of years. People have been interested. That's the point I want you to show that now. People have been interested in human behavior for thousands of years. That's the point I want you to jot down now. I hope you've done that. People have been interested in human behavior for thousands of years. I hope we have taken that down. So if you have taken that down, please just identify in the comment section, and let me know so that I can know we are all on the same page. Now, after that is being said, now psychology has only become a discipline in its own right in the last 100 years. Now, take this down again. Psychology became a discipline. Then you put dash 100 years. Let me take that again. Psychology has only become a discipline. Then you put dash. I'm talking about you making your notes now. These are points you will need definitely. psychology became a discipline, then you put dash 100 years, meaning that it is just in 100 years from now that psychology became a discipline. Please, if you have done that, comment and let me know you have done that so we can move on. So we have I think we are almost done with the class. So we have for many years philosophers puzzled over the nature of human mind and people's motivations. Now, however, philosophers' accounts were essentially speculative. Now, what was speculative about philosopher? I'm asking you a question now. What was speculative? This is how you make your notes. And believe me, if you can go through this like this, if anybody asks you any question from this material, at least you, even though you can't answer 100 or you'll be able to answer 70 if you go through your material like this. And that's why I encourage people to start early, because if you must go through your material like this, it will take time, but it pays off. Now let's take this point again. It says philosophers' accounts were essentially speculative and they made no attempts to prove whether their views were correct or incorrect. Now, what was speculative of philosophers' motivation? Now, dash, let me put it this way. Dash philosophers dash were essentially speculative. Philosophers dash were essentially speculative. You can take that. So you know the answer is accounts. Philosophers' accounts were essentially speculative. That's how they set questions. Telling you that's how it is. So they just put, they might not even give you options. They just put dash. Those ones that they don't even give you options, they are called sub-objective. You have to type your answers out. And if you miss just an alphabet, you have failed the question. So now, as I was saying, the account of philosophers were speculative. What does speculative mean? Speculative in the sense that they are actually not 100% correct. They are on speculations, they are on assumptions. You know, as like unlike physics and chemistry, we said all these ones are based on available facts. Research has been conducted, and the result of the research gives the facts that this is supposed to be this. That when you light fire on gas, it should explode. That is a fact. But when it comes to this now, psychology philosophers now, they are saying their accounts were actually speculative. You say, and they made no attempt to prove whether their views were correct or not. So philosophers, for the fact that their accounts were speculative, they did not make any attempt. Philosophers made no attempt to prove if their views were correct or incorrect. I'm not seeing any response from the comments. Please, if you are following, if you are still there, please let me know so that I can know we are all together and we are moving together. So while I wait for that, we can just continue. So we have many writers agree that breadth of psychology, as we now understand the concept, was in 1879 in Leipzig, Germany. Please, let's take that down. The birth of psychology was in 1879. The birth of psychology was in 1879 in Leipzig. That's Leipzig. Are we together? The concept, now, the birth of psychology was in 1879 in Leipzig. Leipzig is spelled Leipzig. And this Leipzig is in Germany. So as I believe we've taken that down. Okay, okay, good, good. I'm seeing an emoji. Somebody raising hand. Okay, okay, good. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let's continue then. So I believe we've taken that down. So let's just continue. So we have at this time. Okay, okay, yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, thank you. So we have at this time. Okay, at this time we have Wilhelm Wundt Wundt William Wilhelm. That's not William. Actually, it's Wilhelm Wundt founded the first laboratory devoted to experimental psychology. Please let's also take this down. The person who discovered the first, the person who discovered, they can ask you this question, say, who discovered the first laboratory devoted to experimental psychology? The answer is Wilhelm. Wilhelm is spelled Wilhelm. Then Wundt. Wundt is spelled Wundt. Wundt. Wilhelm Wundt. So that's the person who founded the first laboratory devoted to experimental psychology. They can even twist it. They can say Wilhelm Wundt founded the first dash devoted to dash. So please don't mix these points up. Just write these particular points in a line where it is easy for you to identify when you are reading. Those are the points you pick. So we have that as that. So we can move on. Now, it said over the next 40 years, many universities throughout Europe and the United States set up their own laboratories. Now, that's another point to take out again. Now, over 40 years. Okay, let's not put okay, just put 40 years. Then you can put is equal to. Now, 40 years is equal to universities throughout Europe and United States set up their own labs. 40 years. I'm just giving us, you don't have to necessarily follow my own, but I'm just giving us an idea on how I construct my own notes for better understanding, for like the best way to simplify it is what I'm giving to you now. So just put 40 years equals to universities throughout Europe. And let's not forget, this is because somebody has founded a lab which is devoted to experimental psychology. So now, after then, for over 40 years after 1879, many universities throughout where? Europe and United States, they are now setting up their own labs devoted to what? Experimental psychology. Now, experimental psychology in the sense that this psychology now is no longer based on assumption or common sense. It's now based on facts and theories. I don't know if you get that. It's now based on facts and theories. So so that's that for that. So we have let's continue. So the main belief shared by these early pioneers was that human psychological processes could be studied objectively using some experimental method developed over years by natural science, for example, physics and chemistry. The first recognized book on psychology was written by William James and published in. Okay, now this experimental psychology that we spoke of earlier, we never even knew they were going to give us details on experimental psychology. But from the name experimental psychology, it's no longer the psychology based on assumption. It's psychology based on research and experiments. So they now explain it to us now. He said the main belief, this one I don't really need to write it down because from the word experimental psychology, you should know that from where we are coming from, the misconception of psychology. But now it is being cleared that after somebody discovered a lab which is devoted to experimental psychology in 1879, and over 40 years, Europe and the United States, there have been universities that has been established which is also devoted to that experimental psychology. Now we now said that now the process of studying is no longer based on assumption but now based on experiments that has been developed over the year through natural science. Now let me give us a point here. Experiments of psychology, how is it developed? How is it developed? The answer is through natural science. Natural sciences like physics and chemistry. I don't know if we are together. Now, the main belief shared by these early pioneers, why is this thing looking now? Sorry. The main belief shared by these early pioneers was that human psychology process could be studied using the same experimental method developed over the years by natural sciences. Now, the same method natural sciences like physics and chemistry uses, the same scientific method. The scientific method we have about 9 or thereabout, which is the first stage is to identify that there is a problem. Identify, that's the first stage where you identify that there's a problem. Then the second stage, now you cannot break down the problem, define it, then now begin to look for a way around the problem. But the most important, which is the first thing, is knowing that there's a problem. So this scientific method now is now what is now applicable to psychology. Now let's take that this point. The first recognized book on psychology was written by William James. Let's take that point down. William James. The first recognized book on psychology was written by William James and it was published in 1890. Now let me give you a point here. There's no need to write too much story because all what you are writing is just points that you can develop. There's no need to write too much story. Now just put 1890, then you put is equal to 1890 equal to William James first recognized psychology book. Simple. With that, you could tell that okay, the first recognized book ever on psychology was written by who? William James, and it was published in the year 1890. So just summarize it by saying 1890 William James, 1890 equals to William James equals to first recognized book on psychology. I believe that is clear enough. I don't know if you are getting this point I'm giving you. Please, if you are getting this point and you are following, please do well to let me know in the comments below so we can move on. So let's take that point again. 1890 equals to William James equals to first recognized book on psychology. So we have from these early beginnings, psychology expanded quite rapidly and achieved various important milestones in its history. Many sees the writings of Sigmund Freud as very significant in the development of psychology. Although, as you will see later, his work has been criticized for lacking in sound scientific basis. Psychology today encompasses a wide range of perspective and has been applied to a large number of different areas of human functioning. You will learn about some of these in what follows. I know you now find our discussion meaningful and interesting. Let us continue. Now, from what I just read now, one point again you're going to take is that Sigmund Freud equals to, are you with me? Sigmund Freud equals to significant development of psychology. Significant development of psychology, meaning that somebody who is called Sigmund Freud made a significant development in psychology. Is the idea. They might not put it this way, but you should know that apart from this person who wrote a book in 1890, that's William, if the first recognized book, the next person that his work really influenced psychology, his writing really influenced psychology is who? Sigmund Freud. So we are good. So now the next phase now said any dictionary and almost all introductory psychology textbook will contain a description of the word psychology. Unfortunately, you may find that there are almost as many different descriptions of the subject area as there are textbooks. This may not, however, be as confusing as it might at first appear, as many descriptions will share common elements. So we have or say basically same thing, slightly different way. Why do psychologists differ in their description? Okay, so that's nothing to worry about. So let's just move on. So we have there are at least two reasons why psychologists do not always agree on simple common description of psychology. Now, as we have said earlier on, each psychologist have different perception and perspective to their opinion. So we have the first thing now I said two reasons why psychologists do not always agree on a simple common description of psychology. Just like we have in economics too, there's not one grounded or one generally accepted definition for economics, but there is one which is mostly accepted. Same thing is in psychology too. So we have the reasons why they are all not agreeing on one common description. That the first is that psychology is a relatively new discipline. Compared with science such as chemistry and physics, psychology is in its infancy and its therefore and its infancy and its theories and methods are still being developed. Now I'll explain that. Let me just read the second one. The second reason is that psychology already covers a diverse range of subjects and psychologists working in different areas. Psychology in slightly different ways. Let us start an example so that you can have a clear understanding. Okay, educational psychologists will be mainly concerned with the way in which children learn and how to help children. Okay, now let me quickly explain the first one. The first one says psychology is a relatively new discipline, as you can agree. As I said, it was it became generally known about 100 years ago, and about 40 years after, universities in the United States and Europe they started establishing, So we have compared with science such as chemistry, unlike chemistry and science that have been, you know, ages, they've been around in ages and for ages and compared to psychology, you know psychology is actually infancy. Psychology is in the infancy, and the theories and methods are still being developed. So when something is still undergoing development, there are a lot of people that comes up with their own perceptions, and so the point one is that psychology is relatively new. You understand? Although this questions like this, I really don't really pay much attention to it because you're not going to be asked to define or write. You're just going to be choosing A or B, but you can just know them for knowing sake. So the reason why psychologists most times don't agree is because one, psychology is actually new, in its infancy stage, and is still going through development. And secondly, psychology covers a diverse range of subjects. So that is that for that. So let's move to the next. So we have the second self-assessment. It says state one reason why psychologists disagree on common description of psychology. I think we just answered that now. Psychology is in its infant stage, it's still new, and it's still going through development. And also we also say psychology is something very wide. It covers a wide range of field. So just like the example given, he said somebody who's an educational psychologist, that person will just be concerned about how children learn, how to help children who are not doing well at school. Somebody who is a psychiatry psychologist now, that person will be very particular about how to help develop our patient's brain, how they think, if they have mental issues, how to develop, and this person coming from his perspective, he speaks on that field as against that of the educational psychologist. So it's a very wild field. It's a wide field, I mean. So I think we've answered the self-assessment question. So just give me a moment. 3.2. Okay, we actually run out of time, and we might have to call it a wrap. My system here is running low, and we have power supply. I don't want it to shut down along the way. Okay, so let me just take one more, and we can call it a wrap. So let's go through this quickly. If you are following, please let me know so that I can know we are all on the same page. So we have is psychology more than just common sense? Now let's take this together. One reaction that people have when they hear of the result of a psychological research is that it is all just common sense, which is actually not true. While it is true that psychologists do sometimes confirm that people may already believe, their research also allowed them to ascertain the conditions under which certain events do or do not occur. Now, psychology has gone beyond just common sense. Now, psychology might agree that okay, this person is to come to work by 10, and this person has always been coming to work by 10. But on this fateful day, he came to work by 11, and he was unperturbed about it. Now, so common sense would just be that okay, he came late deliberately, he should be punished. But psychologists don't just act like that. Psychologists see beyond the surface. Psychologists want to know that why is it that this person who doesn't come to work late comes to work today, and instead of him to be apologetic about it, is unapologetic about it and is unperturbed about it. Psychologists want to know what must have influenced this behavior, what must have propelled such a behavior by him. So that is why we would say psychology is more than just common sense, because psychologists want to know. Okay, now the point we are going to take down is okay. So what do you say the answers? Okay, which of the assessments, please? I think we've done the third assessment now. Which of the assessments, please? Okay, is it the second assessment? State reason why. Okay, disagree. Is it the second assessment? Please identify. Is it the second or the first assessment? While we wait for you to tell us which of the assessments. So I'll just keep on with this one, which says excuse me. Let's catch my breath. Okay. Okay, now let's continue. While it is true that psychologists do sometimes confirm what people may already believe, their research also allowed them to ascertain the conditions under which certain events do or do not occur. I believe we get that. So psychologists might confirm the general belief of everybody that it is common sense, but they go beyond the surface to find out, to ascertain. Now, take this point down, please. psychologists ascertain ascertains the conditions under which certain events do or do not occur. Are we together? Psychologists, let me take that again. Psychologists ascertains psychologist ascertains, are we together? The conditions under which certain events, okay, thank you very much. Mr. Iroro, yeah, I'm yet to hear from you. Okay, the second. Okay, thank you. So I'll take that again immediately I'm done with this one. So, okay, psychologists ascertain under which certain events, please, it's events, do or do not occur. Okay, different people have different views of how the world works and may presume different things about human nature. Sometimes, common sense appears to be contradictory. For example, if you were asked to speculate as to why some people enjoy each other's company and others do not, you may fall back on the proverb, birds of the same feathers flock together. In other words, people with similar interests, habits, and personalities tend to attract to each other. However, you might equally have provided an alternative theory, which is that opposites attract. Both of these expressions are well known, yet surely both cannot be true. Psychologists may wish to examine this and determine whether one is more accurate than the other, identify the circumstance under which one is truer than the other. Just like what we said, it's an illustration between this is an illustration explaining why some persons will choose to roll out with friends and some persons will not choose to. And the illustration of birds of the same feathers flock with each other was given. Very true. If you are cool with some persons, you'll be free to move out with them. And if otherwise, if you are not cool with them, then you don't flock with them. But for a psychologist, that is not enough reasons. Psychologists want to know why birds of the same feathers flock with each other. Psychologists want to know what if birds of each other, as they might be, still sometimes don't want to flock with each other. So that is that for that. So it's not actually all common sense. Common sense psychology is limited. We'll take the self-assessments, which is the second one more time, then we call it a wrap. So it states one reason why psychologists disagree on common descriptions of psychology. Okay, now to answer this question, self-assessment exercise 2, psychologists cannot agree on a common description because one, psychology is new. Psychology is in its infancy. Let's not forget we said over 100 years. That was when it was established as a science. So 40 years after, universities in Europe and United States begin to identify with psychology. So the reason why psychologists will not agree is because this same psychology is in its infancy and is going through series of development. And secondly, psychologists cannot agree on one common description because psychology to somebody who is an educational psychologist might be different to somebody who is a psychiatric psychologist. As if we have anything like that. What I'm trying to say is that we have different fields in psychology, and psychology is very wide. So psychology to me might be a different thing, and to you it might be a different thing, and we are all psychologists. So with that being said, let's call this class a wrap. Let's bring the class to an end. Okay, before we close the class for today, let us quickly take this. Still in module 3, still in units page 23. So there are many other examples of common sense, still under a psychology common sense, so which turns out not necessarily to be true. As you read more about psychology, you will come across a number of such challenges. For example, some police officer may believe that they can persuade a reluctant suspect to confess, or believe that only a guilty person would sign a confession. We will see in another unit of this course that both of these presumptions may actually be true. That is very correct. Yeah, some police officer might know their way or have their way of, persuading a reluctant suspect to confess. I know some cases too. They might feel it's only if you are guilty, that's when you confess. If you're not guilty, there's nothing to confess about. Subsequently, we will find out in our subsequent class about this. So we have self-assessment 3, which is going to be the last thing we are treating today. It said visit the School of Arts and Social Science in National University of Nigeria library. Open any recent book on introduction to psychology at the contents page and note the different subjects that are covered. If possible, compare it with an introductory psychology book published more than 20 years ago. Note the difference between content of two books. Okay, this assessment, we're not able to take this assessment because it's a lot of work. But the summary of it is that what I just trying to say is that let's take somebody just commented, it's a lot of laugh. So let's just take the point is that this assessment, what they actually want us to do is get compare. They want us to compare published books on psychology over more than 20 years ago with recent ones, and know the difference between the content of the two volumes. So it's just that psychologists back then as against psychology now is what they want us to do. But if you must ask me, psychology back then might not be as detailed and as developed as now, because now we have more fields, we have more developed theories psychologists are now using. So we might not be able to make that comparison and make that. So thank you very much, guys. We might just have to call this a wrap. Please, if you have any questions, just use the comment section and ask the question. I'll be very much available to attend to your questions. You can also reach out to me on WhatsApp where I will attend to all the questions, or you can use the comment section. Thank you very much, guys. I look forward to seeing you in other tutorials. Bye.